Right, welcome to Sleep Month. I'm chatting with Kate Driver. Kate, do you want to tell us a little bit about what you do, and then we will move on to all things sleep?
Yes, hello Emily. Hello everybody. So I am a naturopath and a women's health coach, and I also call myself the perimenopause practitioner. And I do specialize in perimenopause. That's why I'm here, obviously. And I have been, it's my 23rd year as a naturopath. So over 22 years as a naturopath. And I mainly see women. I see women in clinic, but also I work online, and I'm very passionate about helping women ditch their symptoms really quickly because they don't need to suffer. That's really it in a nutshell.
Awesome. So this
naturally, of course, being a naturopath. Sorry.
So this month we're looking at sleep, and obviously, you know, if our sleep is messed up, it just impacts on everything, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And I've been through that myself. I think we all know that. I don't think anybody's got away with not having a bad night's sleep here and there. But particularly at this age, it can be really, really bad. And I know, I have loads and loads of patients that have sleep issues, and I've had them before, like at the beginning of perimenopause, when I first started really getting it, and going through stress as well, that can affect you, and it just makes you feel like you're losing your mind, doesn't it?
Yeah, totally. It's horrible.
I don't know. I don't function very well without sleep, so I know how important it is. And sleep is just such an important part of our lives that if we skimp on our sleep, it affects everything. And inflammation increases. So inflammation increases in perimenopause and menopause anyway. So we don't need that extra lack of sleep, which will increase inflammation even more. And then it will exacerbate all your symptoms. So yeah, absolutely. It's your best medicine. That's what I say.
Yeah. So you were going to tell us about the link between histamine and sleep.
Yeah, so histamine and sleep is an interesting one. And I talk about histamine and hot flushes every now and then with people, because sometimes they miss that. They look at, just look at your hormones. And I talk about cortisol and increasing hot flushes. But histamine also increases hot flushes. But histamine also, because it gives you awake. It's actually involved in keeping you awake. It makes you feel alert. Then it can also cause insomnia and many other symptoms. And some other symptoms are like rashes, and when you get, hay fever and allergies, migraines and headaches. Brain fog is an interesting one. A lot of people don't think about it with that. And then obviously things like sinusy, nasal congestion, heart palpitations, heart racing, even painful periods. And the other thing about histamine I thought I mentioned, because some women might tweak if they're thinking, oh, is histamine affecting me with my sleep? I don't know, because it's not going to affect everybody. But women that have had endometriosis or adenomyosis or polycystic ovaries, it's a histamine that it's actually caused by mast cell activation. So mast cells are white blood cells that release histamine in the body. And when women are estrogen dominant states like endometriosis, adenomyosis, even fibroids, polycystic ovaries, they're probably more likely to have this histamine intolerance or mast cell activation, where their body releases more histamine from their white blood cells called mast cells. And so they get more affected by the histamine, and the histamine will cause that pain in those things like, endometriosis, how it can cause pain. But some women don't have those, and they might have bad period pain. So that can be a clue. If you've had bad period pain in the past, it could be a sign that you're sensitive to histamine. Some people might not have, and it all of a sudden becomes a problem now. So histamine, it's a compound, but it also is a neurotransmitter that acts on the brain and affects our mood and how we feel. So that's why it can cause things like brain fog, and anxiety as well is another one. That's one that I always forget. So we look at, and I treat people with anxiety all the time, and even with myself, I've suffered anxiety most of my life up until probably the last 10 years, when I thought, yep, this is enough, when it affects you really badly in perimenopause, because it can get worse. And so some women that are trying everything for anxiety could also be histamine sensitive. So histamine can either build up in the body, or it can, or it could just be that person has an intolerance to it or a sensitivity, or they can have a genetic mutation or genetic polymorphism. That means that they don't produce enough of this enzyme called DAO or DAO. I call it DAO. So it's dianamine oxidase. It's an enzyme that helps break down histamine and gets rid of it from your body. And when people don't have enough of the enzyme, that histamine also builds up in the body. But it can be from this estrogen dominance. When you have too much estrogen, and this is really common in perimenopause, even though women just automatically think, well, their symptoms are dropping. Their hormones are dropping. That estrogen stimulates these mast cells to release more histamine. And when that happens, and they've got high histamine all the time, that stimulates your body to produce more estrogen, and it becomes this vicious cycle. So you can sort of see how that can sort of stay with people. And that's exactly what was happening to me. I've seen it happening to so many women that they just don't see that. Well, if they don't learn about it, nobody tells them. And there's loads of practitioners that would know about it as well. So this histamine, we need it for our body. We need it to sleep, to stay alert. It's involved in your sexual behaviour, your libido. It helps us produce stomach acid. It's involved with your digestion, and it can be part of the bacteria in your gut and on your food to a point that the body produces too. Are you okay? Because you keep looking out the window.
Yeah, I'm aware that my other half is outside with one of the dogs, and these dogs are about to go mental. That's all.
Oh, that's all right. That's what I was aware of that. I thought, oh no, somebody's going to come in the window. So it's the dogs, is it?
Yeah, it's the dogs. So I'm going to ask a question, and this is just probably a really stupid question, but there we go. So my knowledge of histamine is only really in terms of, if you get an insect bite or whatever, and you take antihistamines. And I don't really know any more about it, like what things might be causing higher histamine, what might be sort of triggering this in me. Do you know what I mean? I mean, everything you're describing, I'm like, yes, oh. And then I'm like, what do I do to help this? Do I just start taking an antihistamine, or are there dietary things I can do? Are there lifestyle things I can do? What do we do?
Oh, absolutely. So you look at whether, you think that those symptoms might be an issue, and we have to look at the foods that you're having. So, because it affects people. We produce histamine to help us with our memory as well, and our learning and our concentration. So it's there to act on the brain, and it can affect our serotonin and our dopamine. So if it affects the serotonin, it can cause anxiety or depression. If it affects dopamine, it can cause lack of motivation. So it's there for motivation. And it also affects your melatonin, which is how it affects sleep. And it affects your circadian rhythm, which is your wake-sleep balance. So it's involved with all those processes. And it can be, instead of just somebody saying, well, it's only because I've got allergies to mosquitoes or hay or pollen or whatever. It can be because of lots of other reasons, for having things like leaky gut, digestive issues. Some people with parasites or a bacterial imbalance or the microbiome imbalance in the gut have histamine issues. So basically the histamine gets eliminated through the gut bacteria. So if that gut bacteria is imbalanced and our body's, we're taking in a lot of the histamine foods as well, and our body's under stress and there's not the right nutrients in place to help us eliminate it, then it just builds up in our body. And I talked about high estrogen, didn't I? Low thyroid function can cause high histamine too. So this is really common in perimenopause and menopause, low thyroid function, even subclinical hypothyroidism. So I find that a lot of women have low thyroid function, they have estrogen dominance. And estrogen dominance doesn't mean that your blood test, just ladies, just so you know, if your blood test even says normal estrogen, it's a comparison between your progesterone and your estrogen. So if your estrogen is too high compared to your progesterone, you're automatically estrogen dominant. It doesn't mean that it's going to show high in your blood test. I just sort of, say that because sometimes people just assume it's really high estrogen in a blood test by itself.
Yeah, and I think it's worth just quickly pointing out as well that at the start of perimenopause, our progesterone drops much more steadily, exactly. And our estrogen is doing all sorts of weird things. So there's no surprise that a lot of us would have estrogen dominance at various times in perimenopause, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. And when there are these gut issues as well, so when you do have an imbalance in the gut bacteria, even when you've got low bile or sludgy bile, and this is bile is the substance that we release from our gallbladder. So if ladies have had the gallbladder out and they don't really, they don't have a nice flow of bile because their liver just trickles a little bit out, then that's not going to actually control the bile was there to not only break down your fats, but also to control your bacterial balance in your gut. It pushes out bad bugs and keeps that balance, but also pushes out the bad estrogens. So it can be things like that, you know, it can just dropping, like you said, and that's a normal process. But if there's things like that happening, and also, you know, foods, I mean, this is the big thing is food. So you're saying, what do you do about it? Well, firstly, we look at the foods that can increase histamine and try and avoid them as much as possible. And then you can add other foods that can help reduce histamine. So the most common foods, unfortunately for some women, and I've been through these low histamine diets before, and it's been amazing. But some people go, oh my God, how do I do that? So it's mainly fermented foods, most dairy products, but mostly cheese and yogurt, anything that's sort of fermented. Fermented foods like, you know, everybody's crazy on the kombucha and kimchi and all those, and kefir, all those fermented drinks probably should be avoided. And then unfortunately things like wine, most alcohols, but wine, champagne and beer are the worst because they're fermented. Cured meats, processed meats like so bacon and salami and things like that, tomatoes, canned fish, and things, you know, reheated foods, not all the, like if it's really quickly reheated, like just half a day or a day afterwards, it depends how sensitive people are. But if people keep reheating foods over and over again, say if you cook a big batch of something at the beginning of the week and you're reheating that food, bacteria builds up, and that big bacteria on the food releases histamine as well. So we've got to be aware of that. It might not just be these heat foods that I've talked about. It could be that people are reheating food a lot. And then there's things called...
So that's really interesting. Like on the fermented things, you know, less so like the cheese and the yogurt and stuff, but, you know, the kefir and kombucha and stuff, those are things that we kind of think, oh, this is healthy, this is going to be helping me. And, you know, it's such a minefield, isn't it? And this is why it's so difficult, because everybody's different. And it's why, you know, that if somebody has an inkling that they might have a histamine problem, it would be worth them sort of reaching out to you to actually get to the bottom of it, wouldn't it? Rather than just trying to kind of go, oh, well, let's just eliminate a load of stuff.
Yeah, because it's not also, yes, you're right. And it's not also just about going on a low histamine diet and just staying on that. It's like when people go on a FODMAPs diet or something like that, it should only be temporary until you, to help relieve your symptoms, until you to actually address the issue for the first place. So somebody might have a leaky gut, and that might be causing it. It might just be the diet. It could be that they've got a lot of inflammation in the body generally, which increases the immune system response. It could be that, like I said, they've got the estrogen dominance or thyroid issue. And there's so much with the foods that when I go through the list with people, I can say to them, well, some of these foods might be all right with you, some might not be. There's also histamine liberators. There are things like chocolate. A lot of, you know, so many ladies might have a glass of wine and some chocolate in the evening and then wonder why they can't sleep, and or might get hot flushes. So that can be a trigger. And, you know, really healthy things as well. We talked about the fermented stuff, but even things like green tea that can suppress this enzyme, that DAO enzyme, and stop you from breaking down the histamine. So many women have green tea, don't they? Because it's good for you. And that can actually help your gut bacteria. That's one thing I was doing, actually, when that happened to me years ago. I was actually having green tea because I was doing a lot of online work and it was keeping me alert, and I don't drink coffee. And I thought, oh, this is great getting into the green tea, but I didn't know that I was suppressing that enzyme, and that's why I was getting more histamine reactions. Yeah, so it's partly looking at reducing those foods, but then you can add foods like, I shouldn't say foods, it's more herbs. Things like coriander and basil, I tell people to just throw loads of things like that. Any of the fresh herbs, oregano is good, garlic's good as well. If you look at supplements, there's a few supplements as well, but I try and get people to add lots of those herbs in their foods. And yeah, like I said, it's addressing the issue and looking at, okay, for this person, why is that causing them an issue? And it's usually more common than women think, and they might find it hard to go to sleep, but they might also wake up a lot. And what I found interesting when I looked into this, and for any of those ladies that are asthmatic out there, is that histamine's the highest at about 3 a.m.
Right.
And they say that if anybody's asthmatic, that's why the histamine increases, and that's why apparently asthmatics get the most of their attacks at 3 a.m. And the people that wake up with panic attacks, and I don't know how many, if you've ever come across people like that, I've had a few clients here and there, They've said that, and it's like, oh, that's really interesting. Why do they wake up in the middle of the night and have a panic attack when they're just sleeping? They should be relaxed. But that's a histamine issue as well. It wakes them up. Yeah, so it's really interesting how it can help. It can affect their sleep and stop them from sleeping. And they might have tried so many other things, but unless they're looking at this side of it, it may not resolve. And I think it's probably more common than people realise. Yeah,
I should think so. No, that's been brilliant, Kate. Thank you so much. And if anybody wants to find out more information, they can reach out to you. I'll put your contact details on the end of the video. So awesome.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, great. Thanks ladies for listening, and thanks Emily for talking to me, and I hope that was interesting.
Thank you. Awesome.
Thanks. Bye.